I want to talk about something that's been on my mind for years. My name is Walter Finch. I'm 78. For 35 years, I was the chief forensic accountant at Sterling Financial. My job was to follow the numbers, no matter where they led. You see, on my last day, I mailed a single report to my home address. It contained everything I'd seen that didn't add up. That report was my quiet exit strategy. And a year later, it became the only thing that kept an entire management team out of prison. Let me tell you how the numbers spoke to me. For 35 years, my department was a quiet room where whispers added up. I built what I called a ledger of whispers. It wasn't just about finding fraud. It was about understanding the story a transaction told when it didn't match the one being sold. You see, I trained my team to look for the patterns in the static. A payment to a vendor that always landed just under the approval threshold. A series of consultancy fees that mirrored the quarterly dips in revenue. It was a system built on patience and context, one case file at a time, over decades. My wife, Evelyn, was a librarian. She understood cataloging truth. She'd say, "Walter, in any system, you must keep your own library. Document the source. A fact without a provenance is just a rumor." Her advice was about keeping your own library. I took that to heart, not just for books, but for every anomaly I ever noted. Then came Liam Sterling, 29 years old. The board brought him in for a digital transformation. He gave a presentation where he called my life's work a legacy cost center. He said our forensic accounting was analog thinking in a digital world. He talked about AI-driven compliance platforms, algorithmic oversight, and sunsetting manual processes. He didn't even look at our conviction rate. He was looking at the salary line on a spreadsheet. The sidelining was methodical. Our reports were rerouted. Our recommendations were tagged for review by his new software, which always returned a finding of insufficient data. The truth is, the system was designed not to see what we saw. The human pattern recognition, the intuition built on 10,000 cases, it was being defined as the inefficiency. The firing meeting was 6 months later. It was clinical. There was an HR representative, a sheaf of papers, and a severance offer. Liam wasn't even there. His chief of staff delivered the message. They were consolidating functions under the new platform. My role was being made redundant. The coffee in the carafe was getting cold. I signed the papers. My hands were not shaking. I felt a strange, cold calm. Here's the part that haunts me, but not in the way you might think. As I packed my personal effects, a framed photo of Evelyn, my good pen, a decades-old calculator, I realized I had one last piece of work to do. I had 6 months of garden leave as part of the severance. I decided to use it. The meticulous process of compiling the report took almost the entire 6 months. I worked at my home desk, early in the mornings. I cross-referenced 35 years of personal notes, memos, and flagged audit trails. I only included what was unassailable: transaction IDs, dates, amounts, the specific clause in the accounting standard it violated, and the internal memo where I had documented my concern at the time. No conjecture, just a chain of evidence. It was a forensic map of every red flag I'd ever raised that had been ignored, dismissed, or buried. My wife's lesson was my guide. I documented the provenance of every fact. I created an index so dense it was its own proof. The final document was 247 pages. It wasn't an accusation.
It was a testament, a record of whispers that had been shouted into the void. On the last day of my garden leave, I went to the post office. The physical act of mailing it certified was the final step. I addressed the thick envelope to myself. The clerk waited. I paid for the postage and got the receipt with the tracking number. I dropped it in the slot. The sound of the metal flap closing was definitive. I had created my own library, and now I had its sole copy, legally time-stamped and in my possession. The year of retirement that followed was peaceful. I puttered. I read. I thought of Evelyn often. I never once thought about the report sitting in my safe. It was simply a fact, like a book on a shelf. Then, 11 months and 2 weeks after I mailed it, my phone rang. It was a number I didn't recognize. The voice on the other end was the company's new general counsel. He sounded strained. He said there was an urgent matter. The SEC had launched a surprise investigation. Subpoenas had been served. Their new AI platform had failed to flag a series of irregularities. The board was in emergency session. They needed my institutional memory. His hands were shaking. I could hear it in his voice. He begged for a meeting. He said it was for the good of the company, for all the employees. I was calm. I remembered Evelyn's library. I remembered the cold coffee in that meeting room. I gave him my refusal. I told him I would not meet. But I said there was a certified report in my safe, mailed on a specific date, that contained a comprehensive, documented history of every accounting irregularity I had identified during my tenure. I gave him the tracking number. I said their lawyers could subpoena it from me. And then I hung up. The public outcome was in the financial papers. Sterling Financial settled with the SEC for a significant sum. No executives went to prison, thanks to the company's cooperation and the provision of what was termed a previously undiscovered internal report that clarified the historical timeline. The stock price dipped, but recovered. Liam Sterling resigned for personal reasons. And here's what I've learned. There is a quiet satisfaction in seeing justice served by your own handiwork. It wasn't about vengeance. It was about validation. The whispers were real. The ledger was true. And in the end, the only thing that could protect the innocent and assign blame to the reckless was the very analog, human, meticulous work they had thrown away. Here's what I've learned. Your integrity is your paper trail. It's not a feeling. It's a record. My advice, keep your own quiet library. Document your concerns with dates and facts in a personal file. Do it ethically for clarity, not revenge. There is power and hope in that discipline. If this story resonated, I'd recommend 2 books. First, The Smartest Guys in the Room by Bethany McLean and Peter Elkind, the definitive account of the Enron scandal and failed oversight, and Liar's Poker by Michael Lewis, a brilliant look at the culture that created modern finance. You'll find links below. If you found this valuable, consider subscribing. I'd love to hear your stories in the comments. Thank you for listening. Take care of yourselves.